What would you do if the very partner you trusted with your company was plotting your downfall? Ethan Caldwell, a successful CEO, was on the brink of sealing a billion-dollar deal when a cleaning lady named Isabella rushed to warn him of a conspiracy orchestrated by his longtime friend, Daniel Wright. As the betrayal unfolded and the stakes rose, Ethan's world turned upside down. But just when it seemed all hope was lost, a shocking revelation would turn the tables and expose hidden truths. Stay tuned to witness a gripping tale of deception, courage, and the fight for justice. Mr. Caldwell, the CEO of Genesis Corp., just confirmed tomorrow's meeting at 10 a.m., announced his secretary as she placed a folder on the sleek glass desk. Ethan Caldwell nodded, his eyes glued to the computer screen, where numbers projected exponential growth following the contract signing. Thank you, Sarah. Please let Daniel know I want to review the documents one last time before I turn them in tonight. In the hallway, Isabella Reyes pushed her cleaning cart and paused when she heard voices coming from the meeting room, the door slightly ajar. Tomorrow is when we end his reign, a voice declared, one that Isabella recognized as Daniel Wright, Ethan's longtime partner and friend. Genesis is ready. Once he signs, there's no going back. Another voice, deeper and unfamiliar, replied, Caldwell Technologies will have a new owner in 24 hours. Isabella froze. Only 3 weeks into the job, she had no access to confidential information, but she sensed something was terribly wrong. What if he suspects something? Daniel asked. Impossible, came the reply. The lawyers are ours, and the documents look flawless. He's blinded by the prospect of global expansion. Isabella moved away silently, her heart racing. What'd she do with this information? Who would believe her? A simple cleaner against powerful executives. The next morning, she arrived early, determined to find evidence. Passing by Daniel's office, she noticed the door was open. He was on the phone, his back to the entrance. Yes, the trap is set. Caldwell won't know what hit him. When he signs, send the report to the FBI. They'll find all the evidence we planted. In a daze, Isabella cleaned the same spot on the table 3 times while her mind raced. Daniel wasn't just trying to take control of the company. He was setting up a trap that could send Ethan to prison. At 9:45, the executive floor buzzed with energy as lawyers, Genesis Corp executives, and Caldwell's team headed for the meeting room. Isabella watched Ethan walk down the hallway, confident in his immaculate suit. This was her last chance. Mr. Caldwell, she called, quickening her pace. He turned, surprised to be addressed by one of the cleaning staff. Yes? I need to speak with you. It's urgent. The executives around them gave disapproving looks. Ethan, we're running late, Daniel urged, placing his hand on his partner's shoulder. Isabella noticed the slight smile at the corner of Daniel's lips. He was winning. Mr. Caldwell, please, she insisted, lowering her voice. It's about the meeting. Don't sign anything. It's a trap. Ethan's expression hardened. What did you say? I heard them. They want to bring you down. Genesis Corp. Your partner. They're planning something. Daniel let out a forced laugh. Ethan, control your employees. This lady must be confused. I'm not confused, Isabella exclaimed, her voice shaking. I heard Mr. Wright talking about planting evidence about the FBI. Ethan's eyes flickered between Daniel and the cleaner. Isabella Wright? He asked, reading her name badge. How long have you worked here? 3 weeks, but, she stammered. You're accusing my partner of 15 years of betraying me based on what exactly? Desperation grew in her chest. A conversation I overheard. Please, I'm just trying to help. Ethan glanced at his watch and then at the room where everyone was waiting. I appreciate your concern, but I have a billion-dollar deal to close. They will destroy everything you've built, Isabella said, her voice rising in a final effort. Something in her tone made Ethan hesitate for a moment. Ethan, we can't keep Genesis waiting, Daniel pressed. Ethan looked at Isabella one last time. There was something in her eyes, urgency, genuine fear. But there was too much at stake. Years of work were culminating in this moment. Get back to your work, he finally said. Isabella felt her stomach sink as she watched Ethan enter the meeting room, followed by Daniel, who cast a victorious glance back at her. The door closed with a soft click. Isabella knew she had only minutes to act or it would be too late. Isabella couldn't just stand there. She hurried to Daniel's office, her heart pounding against her ribs. If she could find proof, maybe she could stop whatever was about to happen. The office was empty, and she quickly rifled through the papers on the desk, finding nothing suspicious. Then she noticed a tablet left carelessly on the chair. She grabbed it, hoping it wasn't locked. It wasn't. Daniel had been too confident, too rushed to secure it. Her fingers flew across the screen, opening emails, documents, anything that might contain evidence. Then she saw it, a folder labeled Caldwell Takedown. Inside were doctored financial statements, fake offshore accounts in Ethan's name, and a detailed plan to frame him for fraud. "Oh my God," she whispered, quickly taking photos with her phone. She had to get to Ethan before he signed anything. As the meeting progressed in the conference room, Ethan Caldwell sat at the head of the table, surrounded by lawyers and executives. Something felt off. The clauses they were discussing seemed different from what he had reviewed earlier. "Wasn't this section about liability worded differently yesterday?" he asked, pointing to a paragraph. "Just legal jargon," Daniel replied smoothly. "Our lawyers made some standard adjustments for clarity." One of the Genesis Corp representatives cleared his throat. "Perhaps we should move on to the signing. We're on a tight schedule." Ethan frowned. Everyone seemed eager to rush through this, which was atypical for a deal of this magnitude. He thought of Isabella, the urgency in her voice, the warning that had seemed so absurd moments ago now planted a seed of doubt in his mind. "I'd like a moment alone with my team," he announced suddenly. The Genesis Corp representatives exchanged glances but nodded and left the room. "What's going on?" Daniel asked, his smile strained. "That cleaning lady seemed pretty convinced you're setting me up." Ethan leaned forward, his tone serious. Daniel laughed too loudly. "How are you letting a janitor's wild imagination derail the biggest deal of your career? Tell me straight, Daniel. Is there anything I should know before I sign?" Before Daniel could respond, the door burst open, and a man in a dark suit flashed a badge. "Mr. Caldwell, I'm Agent Mark Lassiter with the FBI. We have reason to believe you're about to enter into a fraudulent agreement." The room erupted in chaos as two more agents entered, one moving toward Daniel, who had gone pale. "What the hell is this?" Ethan demanded, standing up. "We've been investigating Genesis Corp for months," Lassiter explained. "They've been using fake business deals to launder money, and according to our source, your partner has been helping them." All eyes turned to Daniel, who was backing toward the door. "This is ridiculous," he stammered. "Ethan, don't listen to them. Our source provided evidence this morning," Lassiter continued. "Emails, financial records, all pointing to a conspiracy to frame you." Ethan felt the world tilt beneath him. "Source? Who?" "I can't reveal that, but they were very concerned about your welfare." "Isabella." "It had to be her. But how did she know? How did she get evidence?" One of the agents approached Daniel. "Mr. Wright, we need you to come with us." Daniel's face contorted with rage. "This is your fault," he shouted at Ethan. "I deserve to be at the top, not always your shadow." As they led Daniel away, Ethan sank back into his chair, trying to process the betrayal. His phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Check your email. I sent you everything." It was Isabella. He opened his email to find dozens of files showing Daniel's conspiracy with Genesis Corp, evidence that would have buried him if he had signed the papers. "Mr. Caldwell," Agent Lassiter said, "we need your cooperation in the investigation." Ethan nodded absently, still scrolling through the damning evidence. "Of course, but first, I need to find someone." He hurried out of the conference room, searching for Isabella. She wasn't at her cleaning cart, nor in the break room. No one had seen her. "Sir," his assistant approached him, "a man was just here looking for Isabella Reyes." He seemed angry and said he was from security. Ethan felt a chill. What did he look like? Tall, dark suit, had a scar on his right cheek. "Not FBI," Ethan murmured. "That wasn't one of Lassiter's men. Did you tell him where she is?" "I didn't know, but he went to check the storage rooms on the east wing." Ethan ran toward the east wing, dialing security as he went. Something was very wrong. If Daniel had accomplices beyond Genesis Corp, Isabella could be in danger. He reached the storage hallway just in time to see a man forcing Isabella into the service elevator. "Hey," Ethan shouted. The man looked up, revealing the scar on his cheek. He pushed Isabella into the elevator and drew a gun, firing a shot that splintered the wall near Ethan's head. Ethan ducked behind a corner as the elevator doors closed. His phone rang. "Agent Lassiter," he said without preamble. "They've taken her." "One of Daniel's men has Isabella," Lassiter replied. "We'll lock down the building." "Who is this woman to you?" Ethan paused. What was she? A cleaner who had saved his company, his reputation, possibly his life. "She's someone who risked everything to help me." His phone beeped with an incoming call from an unknown number. "I have to go," he told Lassiter. "I think it's them." He switched calls. A digitally altered voice spoke. "Ethan Caldwell, your meddling employee has something that belongs to us. If you want her to live, come to the old West Side warehouse alone. You have 1 hour." The call ended, and Ethan stood in the empty hallway, the choice before him stark and terrifying. Go to the authorities and risk Isabella's life, or walk into what was clearly a trap. She had saved him. Now it was his turn to save her. He headed for the parking garage, ignoring the calls coming in from Lassiter, his decision made. Ethan's Aston Martin roared through Manhattan traffic, weaving between taxis with reckless precision. His mind raced faster than the car. Why had Isabella risked everything for him? What else didn't he know about her, or about Daniel? His phone buzzed constantly. Lassiter, his security team, the board members who'd already heard rumors. He ignored them all. The GPS led him to an industrial area on the outskirts, a maze of abandoned warehouses and rusted chain-link fences. The West Side warehouse loomed ahead, a decaying giant with broken windows that caught the late afternoon sun like jagged teeth. Ethan parked a block away, surveying the area. No visible guards, no cameras, just eerie silence. Every instinct told him to call for backup, but the kidnapper's warning echoed in his mind: alone or she died. He approached cautiously, hand in his pocket gripping the small canister of pepper spray, the only weapon he had. The side door was unlocked. He stepped into darkness, allowing his eyes to adjust to the dim light filtering through dirty skylights. "Hello?" His voice echoed through the cavernous space. A light flicked on in the center of the warehouse. Isabella sat tied to a chair, a gag in her mouth, her eyes wide with fear. Above them, Isabella. Ethan rushed forward, then stopped when 2 men emerged from the shadows, each holding a gun. "Let her go, Daniel," Ethan demanded, his voice steady, trying to buy time as he scanned the warehouse for exits. "This is between us," Daniel replied, pacing around Isabella's chair. This nosy woman ruined years of planning with one lucky discovery. Isabella's muffled protests came from behind the gag. "I don't understand," Ethan said, grappling for control. "We built Caldwell Technologies together. You were going to inherit half of everything." Daniel laughed bitterly. "Half? Always half. Always second." Ethan took a step closer. "Genesis offered me control, full control of everything we built, plus funding for my own projects, the ones you always deemed too risky." One of the gunmen nudged Ethan forward until he stood a few feet from Isabella. "The FBI knows I'm here," Ethan bluffed. "Lassiter has the evidence." "It's over, Daniel." "Not quite." Daniel pulled out a phone. "I still have friends at Genesis, friends who want both of you silenced permanently." "You'd commit murder for what?" "Money, power, freedom from your shadow?" Daniel nodded to one of the men, who raised his gun toward Isabella. Ethan stepped between them. "Wait, you want me, not her." "Actually, we want both of you." Daniel smiled coldly. "But ladies first." Before the gunman could fire, Isabella suddenly kicked backward with surprising strength, toppling her chair into the man's legs. In the same moment, she somehow slipped her hands free from the ropes. Ethan didn't hesitate. He lunged at Daniel while the gunman struggled to regain his footing. They crashed to the floor, grappling for control. The second gunman aimed but hesitated, unable to get a clear shot at Ethan without risking Daniel. Isabella, now free from her restraints, grabbed the fallen chair and swung it at the second gunman, connecting with his arm. The gun clattered to the ground. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder. Daniel kneed Ethan in the stomach and scrambled away. "Kill them," he shouted to his men. The first gunman raised his weapon again, but before he could fire, the warehouse doors burst open and FBI agents poured in, weapons drawn. "Federal agents, drop your weapons." Chaos erupted as the gunman attempted to flee, only to be tackled by agents. Daniel made a dash for a side exit, but was cut off by Agent Lassiter himself. "Daniel, right? You're under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud, kidnapping, and attempted murder." As agents secured the scene, Ethan rushed to Isabella, who was leaning against a pillar, breathing heavily. "Are you okay?" he asked, checking her for injuries. She nodded, still catching her breath. "How did they find us?" Ethan asked, confused. I didn't call them." Agent Lassiter approached, holstering his weapon. Ms. Reyes activated a tracking app before they took her. "Smart thinking." Ethan stared at Isabella with newfound respect. "Who are you really?" Before she could answer, Lassiter continued. "Ms. Reyes has been very helpful to our investigation. We've been tracking Genesis Corp for months, but couldn't get close enough to gather evidence." "You're an FBI agent?" Ethan asked, surprised. Isabella shook her head. "Not exactly. I'm a private investigator. I've been tracking Genesis Corp for personal reasons." She hesitated before continuing. "They destroyed my father's company 5 years ago. The same scheme they tried with you. He couldn't handle the disgrace and took his own life." Her voice was steady, but her eyes revealed the pain. "I've been hunting them ever since." Ethan processed this revelation as paramedics entered to check them for injuries. "We need statements from both of you," Lassiter said, "but it can wait until tomorrow." As they walked out of the warehouse, Ethan couldn't help but feel that something fundamental had changed. The company he'd built, the partner he trusted, all of it had been an illusion. The only real thing in this moment was the mysterious woman walking beside him, who had risked everything to save a stranger. 3 days after the warehouse confrontation, Ethan sat in his penthouse office, staring out at the Manhattan skyline without really seeing it. News of Daniel's arrest had rocked the business world. Caldwell Technologies stock had plummeted, but then rallied slightly when word spread that Ethan had been the victim, not the perpetrator. His assistant knocked softly before entering. "Sir, Ms. Reyes is here." "Send her in," Ethan replied, straightening in his chair. Isabella entered, looking different in tailored slacks and a simple blouse, a far cry from the cleaner's uniform he had first seen her in. "Thank you for coming," Ethan said, gesturing to the chair across from him. "Your message said it was important," she replied, her posture professional yet guarded. "The FBI finished their preliminary investigation. They're saying Daniel was working with Genesis for over a year." "I'm not surprised," Ethan said, studying her face. "Their operations are meticulously planned." "Why didn't you go to the authorities with what you knew?" he asked, curiosity etched on his features. "I did months ago, but Genesis is careful. They never leave a paper trail. The FBI couldn't move without evidence." "So you decided to go undercover as a cleaner in my company?" Isabella nodded. "It was the only way to get close enough." "And you chose to warn me instead of letting me walk into the trap where you could have caught them red-handed." She met his gaze directly. "I don't use people as bait, Mr. Caldwell. Not even billionaires." A hint of a smile touched his lips. "Fair enough. Please, call me Ethan." He stood and walked to the window. "The board wants to issue a statement distancing the company from Daniel. The PR team thinks we should position me as the hero who uncovered the plot." "But that's not what happened," Isabella interjected. "No, you're what happened," he said, turning to face her. "And I'm still trying to figure out why." Before she could respond, Ethan's phone rang. The screen showed Agent Lassiter's name. He answered, his expression darkening as he listened. "When? How many?" He ran a hand through his hair, tension radiating from him. "I'll increase security right away." He hung up, jaw tight. "What's wrong?" Isabella asked, concern lacing her voice. "Daniel's out on bail. Genesis Corp's CEO too. Lassiter says they have resources we don't know about, connections in high places." That's impossible. With the evidence? Apparently not, Ethan interrupted. And there's more. 2 of the FBI's key witnesses have recanted their statements. They're scared. Isabella paled. We're targets now. I've been a target before. Corporate takeovers, hostile competitors. It comes with the territory. He moved to his desk and pressed the intercom. Sarah, call security. I want the building locked down and Miss Reyes has full access clearance. What are you doing? Isabella asked, surprise evident in her voice. Offering you a job. Security consultant. She raised an eyebrow. You're hiring me? You've already proven your value, and frankly, I need someone I can trust. That list has gotten very short recently. I'm not qualified for corporate security. I'm a PI who specializes in financial fraud. Perfect. That's exactly what I need. He handed her a key card. This gives you access to every floor, every file. I want you to find any other traps Daniel might have set. Their fingers brushed as she took the card, and something flickered between them. Tension, awareness, a mutual recognition of being in this together. Ethan, she said quietly, there's something else you should know about me. His phone buzzed again with urgent messages. Can it wait? I need to speak with the board about Daniel's bail. Isabella hesitated, then nodded. It can wait. As Ethan prepared for his meeting, Isabella moved to the window, watching the city below. Her reflection stared back at her, and for a moment, she didn't recognize herself. The woman who had started this mission for vengeance now felt the weight of something more complex. Her phone vibrated with a text, board meeting in 10 minutes. Need you there. To Caldwell Technologies with one purpose, to destroy Genesis Corp and get justice for her father. Now, she found herself invested in saving Ethan's company too. The elevator dinged as security personnel arrived to escort Ethan to the boardroom. He caught her eye before leaving. We'll continue our conversation later, he said. After he left, Isabella opened the secure messaging app on her phone and typed, Target now under my protection. Moving to phase 2. She hesitated before pressing send, knowing that once she did, there would be no going back. Her finger hovered over the screen for 3 long seconds, then she deleted the message. The board meeting lasted 3 grueling hours. Ethan fielded questions about Daniel's betrayal, the company's security protocols, and their liability exposure. Throughout it all, Isabella sat quietly in the corner, observing dynamics, noting who seemed genuinely concerned and who appeared opportunistic. In conclusion, Ethan said, standing at the head of the table, we've engaged external auditors to review all contracts signed in the past 18 months. Miss Reyes will lead our internal investigation. Several board members exchanged glances. Miss Reyes, began Victor Harmon, the oldest board member, while we appreciate your fortuitous intervention, what exactly qualifies you for this position? Before Isabella could respond, Ethan cut in. Miss Reyes uncovered a conspiracy that all of us, myself included, missed. That's qualification enough. After the meeting, they walked silently to Ethan's office. Rain pattered against the floor-to-ceiling windows, turning the city into a blur of refracted lights. You handled that well, Isabella said. They're scared, looking for someone to blame. I'm used to it, Ethan replied, loosening his tie as he collapsed into his chair. Corporate politics is a blood sport. Speaking of blood, Isabella hesitated. There's something I need to tell you. Ethan's phone buzzed again, and he glanced at it, then back at her. I'm listening. When I said Genesis destroyed my father's company, that wasn't the whole story. She took a deep breath. My father was Carlos Reyes. Recognition flashed across Ethan's face. Reyes Technologies? The security breach scandal. She nodded. Genesis orchestrated the whole thing. They planted the security flaw, then exploited it to steal client data. When the breach went public, they were waiting to buy the company for pennies on the dollar. I remember hearing about his suicide. Ethan's voice softened. I'm sorry. Patrick's voice was genuine. But why warn me? We're competitors, Ethan replied. Some things transcend business. Isabella glanced at Ethan, her determination evident. If they can take you down, I'm next, or vice versa. Patrick nodded thoughtfully. What's the play here? Go to the authorities, Isabella explained. The FBI is already investigating, But Genesis has connections. They have already gotten Daniel out on bail. We need to catch them in the act, Ethan added. Exactly, Isabella said, her resolve strengthening. Patrick leaned back, considering. You want to use me as bait? We want to set a trap, Isabella corrected. One they think is their idea. A slow smile spread across Patrick's face. I'm listening. As they outlined the plan, Isabella noticed a shift in Ethan. In this environment, away from corporate politics, he was different, more relaxed, yet more intense. His mind worked quickly, anticipating problems and finding solutions. By evening, they had formulated their approach. Patrick would announce a major expansion of his government contracts division, making his company an irresistible target. Meanwhile, they would work with trusted FBI agents to monitor every approach from Genesis. After dinner, Patrick stepped outside to make arrangements on the secure satellite phone. Isabella and Ethan remained by the fire, the dancing flames casting shifting shadows across their faces. This could work, she said, sipping her wine. If we're careful. It has to work. Ethan's voice was quiet but determined. For your father and for everyone else they've destroyed. Isabella studied him. Why do you care so much? Most CEOs would distance themselves from this mess, hire security, and move on. He met her gaze. Maybe I'm not most CEOs. No, she agreed softly. You're not. The fire crackled in the silence between them. Outside, darkness enveloped the lake, transforming the windows into mirrors that reflected their images against the night. When this is over, Ethan began, then paused. What? Isabella prompted. When this is over, what will you do? The question caught her off guard. For 5 years, vengeance had been her only goal. Beyond that, she had never allowed herself to think. I don't know, she admitted. I never planned for after. Ethan's hand found hers on the couch between them. Maybe you should start. The touch was gentle, questioning. She could have pulled away easily, but she didn't. 2 weeks after their strategy session at the cabin, the plan was in motion. Patrick Chen announced an ambitious expansion of his government contracts division, complete with a flashy pre-press conference that made headlines in all the tech publications. Isabella sat in a rented apartment across from Patrick's corporate headquarters, monitoring communications with a team of FBI agents. The room was sparse, just equipment, coffee cups, and the nervous energy of people waiting for something to happen. Any movement? Agent Lassiter asked, entering with fresh coffee. Nothing yet, Isabella replied, her eyes fixed on the screens. But they'll bite. This is too tempting a target. Her phone vibrated with a text from Ethan. Board meeting finished. Heading your way. Something warm flickered in her chest. Since the night at the cabin, something had shifted between them. Unspoken, but undeniable. Im Reyes, one of the tech specialists, called. We've got unusual traffic attempting to access Chen's servers. Isabella moved quickly to his station. The specialist pointed to a stream of code. Classic probing pattern. They're looking for vulnerabilities. They've taken the bait, Isabella announced to the room, alerting Patrick's security team. Let them in just enough to think they're succeeding. The room buzzed with controlled activity as agents coordinated their response. Isabella sent Ethan an update, then returned to monitoring the attack pattern. They're good, she muttered, watching the infiltration attempt adapt to each security measure, but predictable. An hour later, Ethan arrived, nodding to Lassiter before joining Isabella. What's happening? He asked, his shoulder brushing against hers as he leaned toward the screens. They're in Patrick's system, accessing what they think are confidential contract details. She smiled. Actually, they're accessing her fabricated files. Any idea who's behind the keyboard? Not yet, but they're using the same methods they tried with your company. Ethan's phone rang. He checked the screen, frowned, and answered. Daniel? This is unexpected. Isabella tensed, gesturing for the agents to trace the call. Ethan, we need to talk. Daniel's voice came through, audible to everyone nearby. This has gone too far. You tried to destroy my company and frame me for fraud. Then you had your goons try to kill me. What exactly has gone too far? I'm not behind what's happening now, Daniel insisted. Genesis has cut me loose. They're blaming me for the failure with Caldwell Technologies. Lassiter approached, showing Isabella a note. Call location, Hotel Meridian, downtown. Isabella wrote back, send a team. What do you want, Daniel? Ethan asked, his voice steady. Protection. I know things about Genesis, who's really in charge, how high up their connections go. I'll trade information for immunity. Isabella and Lassiter exchanged glances. This could be the break they needed. Where are you? Ethan asked, not over the phone. Meet me at Bryant Park in an hour. Come alone. The call ended, and everyone stared at Ethan. It's a trap, Isabella said immediately. Obviously, Ethan agreed, but it's also an opportunity. Lassiter nodded. We'll set up surveillance at Bryant Park. If he shows, we'll grab him. And if it's an ambush? Isabella challenged. Then we'll be ready for that too. Lassiter began issuing orders to his team. M. Reyes, one of the tech specialists, called out. We've got movement. Someone downloading the bait files from Chin's server. Isabella snapped back to the monitors. They're extracting exactly what we've planted, false evidence of contract fraud that implicates Patrick Chin. They took it, she said. Now we track where it goes. Lassiter's phone rang. He answered and listened briefly, then addressed the room. Daniel Ride isn't at the Meridian. He checked out 20 minutes ago. He's running, Ethan concluded. Isabella shook her head. We're setting up your meeting at the park. The hours crawled by as they tracked the stolen data while simultaneously preparing for the Bryant Park meeting. Against Isabella's protests, Ethan insisted on being there. He'll only show if he sees me, he argued. We have agents everywhere. I'll be wearing a wire. It's unnecessary risk, Isabella countered. Says the woman who went undercover as a cleaner to infiltrate a corporate conspiracy. Their eyes locked in a silent battle of wills. Finally, Isabella sighed. Fine, but I'm coming with you. Absolutely not. Daniel knows your face now. I'll be in surveillance. He wouldn't see me, Isabella thought, as she prepared to argue further. Finally, Isabella sighed. Fine, but we do this my way. At 1:45 a.m., they approached Central Park on foot, having ditched their phones and any potential tracking devices. The night was cold, the park nearly deserted except for the occasional patrol car. Remember the plan? Ethan whispered as they neared the reservoir. Stay hidden. If anything happens to me. Nothing's going to happen to you, Isabella cut him off. Just keep them talking until Lass's team moves in. They agreed on a compromise with the FBI. A small team would position themselves at a distance, ready to intervene, but far enough away to avoid detection. This is where we split up, Ethan said when they reached the edge of the water. Be careful. On impulse, Isabella pulled him into a fierce hug. You two, she said, slipping away into the shadows to find a vantage point with visibility of the meeting area. The reservoir stretched before her, its surface reflecting the city lights like a dark mirror. Ethan stood alone by the water's edge, his breath forming clouds in the cold air. Minutes ticked by with nothing but the distant sounds of the city as company. Then movement. A figure emerged from the tree line opposite Ethan. Then another, and a third. None was Daniel. Mr. Caldwell, the lead figure called, a woman whose voice carried across the water. Thank you for being punctual. Isabella adjusted her position to get a better look. The woman was tall, elegant, with silver hair pulled back in a severe bun. She didn't look like a corporate criminal, more like someone's distinguished grandmother. Where's Daniel? Ethan demanded, his tone firm. Safe for now. The woman approached until she stood 10 feet from Ethan. I'm Victoria Mercer, CEO of Genesis Corporation. Isabella froze. Victoria Mercer was a legend in business circles, a philanthropist, advisor to presidents, named one of the most powerful women in the world for a decade running. The sense tonight, Mr. Caldwell, Victoria continued. You'll sign these papers transferring controlling interest in Caldwell Technologies to our holding company in exchange for Daniel Wright's life. Why target me? Why not approach me with a legitimate offer? Victoria laughed softly. Because men like you don't sell what they've built. You're too principled. She said it like it was a disease. Sometimes acquisition requires more creative methods. Ethan's voice turned icy. You mean fraud, extortion, and murder. I prefer to think of it as removing obstacles to progress. From her hiding place, Isabella could see the FBI team moving into position. Still too far away to intervene, she needed to buy more time. "You killed my father," she called out, stepping from her hiding place. Victoria turned, unperturbed. "Ah, Miss Reyes, I wondered if you'd join us." Carlos was much like Mr. Caldwell, too stubborn to see reason. "You framed him, destroyed everything he built, then had him murdered." Victoria's voice remained eerily calm. "You too are choosing yours." She nodded to her associates, who drew weapons. "Last chance, Mr. Caldwell. Sign, or you both die here." Ethan looked at the papers, then at Isabella. A silent communication passed between them. "If I sign," he said slowly, "I want proof Daniel is alive and will be released." Victoria smiled. "Of course." She gestured, and one of her men made a call. Moments later, a fourth figure emerged from the trees, pushing Daniel ahead of him. Even from a distance, Isabella could see that he was injured, his face bruised, his walk unsteady. Satisfied, Victoria asked Ethan for his nod. He stepped forward to take the papers. Isabella tensed, her hand moving to the gun hidden beneath her jacket. The FBI was still too far away. As Ethan reached for the pen, he suddenly lunged forward, shoving Victoria off balance and grabbing for her associate's weapon. Chaos erupted. Gunshots echoed across the water. Isabella drew her weapon and fired at the man holding Daniel, hitting him in the shoulder. "FBI! Drop your weapons!" Lassiter's voice boomed as agents rushed in from all directions. In the confusion, Victoria broke free from Ethan and ran toward a hidden path. Isabella pursued, determined not to let her escape. The chase led into a dense section of the park, away from the lights. Isabella lost sight of Victoria for a moment, then spotted her silver hair gleaming in the moonlight. "Stop," Isabella called. "It's over, Victoria." The woman turned, surprisingly calm for someone cornered. "Nothing is over, Miss Reyes. Nothing ever ends." She reached into her jacket. Isabella didn't hesitate. She fired. The New York skyline glittered outside Ethan's penthouse windows as rain tapped gently against the glass. 3 months had passed since the confrontation at Central Park. 3 months of testimonies, investigations, and rebuilding what had been broken. Victoria Mercer had survived Isabella's shot and was now awaiting trial along with several Genesis Corp executives. Daniel Wright had turned state's evidence in exchange for a reduced sentence, his testimony dismantling the criminal enterprise piece by piece. Ethan stood at the window, watching the city lights blur through raindrops. The doorbell rang, and he wasn't expecting anyone at this hour. Isabella stood in the hallway, rain glistening in her hair. "I didn't think you'd come," Ethan said, stepping aside to let her in. "I almost didn't," she replied, moving past him, the scent of rain following her. They hadn't seen each other since the final depositions 2 weeks ago. Isabella had needed space, time to process everything that had happened. "I got your message," she said, turning to face him. "About the foundation?" Ethan nodded. "The Carlos Reyes Foundation for Corporate Ethics. I thought you might approve." A small smile touched her lips. "My father would have liked that." "It's the least I could do." He gestured toward the living room. "Drink?" "Not tonight." They stood in silence, the unspoken tension between them thicker than the storm clouds outside. "I can't stop thinking about it all," Isabella finally admitted. "What happened? What could have happened?" "Neither can I," Ethan said, moving closer, close enough to see the raindrops still clinging to her eyelashes. "What happens now?" he asked quietly. "I don't know," she answered truthfully. "I've spent 5 years chasing vengeance. I'm not sure who I am without that mission." "You're Isabella Reyes." That's enough. The space between them seemed to shrink of its own accord. When his hand touched her face, she didn't pull away. They had survived something impossible together, Ethan said. "That changes people." "Into what?" she whispered. Instead of answering, he kissed her, not tentatively, but with the certainty of someone who had faced death and chosen life. She responded with equal intensity, her hands pulling him closer. When they broke apart, both slightly breathless, Isabella smiled, a real smile that reached her eyes. I guess we'll figure it out, she said. Outside, the rain continued to fall on a city that never slept, washing away the old and making space for what came next. They had survived betrayal and conspiracy. Now they faced something far more complex, the beginning of whatever this was between them. The game of power had ended, but their story was just beginning. As dawn broke over the city, Ethan and Isabella prepared for the next phase of their plan. The fallout from the confrontation at Central Park had left them both shaken, but resolute. They had to act quickly to ensure Genesis Corp's continued attempts to sabotage Caldwell Technologies were thwarted. Ethan stood by the window of his penthouse, the morning light illuminating the skyline. He had arranged for an emergency board meeting to discuss the recent developments and strategize their next steps. Isabella had spent the night reviewing the evidence they had gathered against Genesis, determined to ensure they were ready for any move the corporation might make. "Are you ready for this?" Ethan asked, turning to Isabella as she walked into the room, a stack of files in her arms. "As ready as I'll ever be," she replied, her expression serious but focused. "We need to present a united front to the board. They need to see that we're not backing down." Ethan nodded, appreciating her resolve. "I'll handle the board members' questions, but your insights will be crucial. They respect you, especially after everything that's happened." Isabella smiled faintly. "I hope they remember that I'm not just a cleaner anymore." "You're far from that," Ethan stated, his tone earnest. "You've proven yourself time and again." As they made their way to the conference room, the atmosphere in the building was tense. Employees whispered in hallways, rumors swirling about Daniel's betrayal and the implications for the company. Ethan felt the weight of responsibility pressing down on him as he entered the room filled with anxious board members. Once seated, Ethan cleared his throat and addressed the group. "Thank you all for coming on such short notice. We're facing a critical juncture in our company's future, and I want to be transparent about the threats we're dealing with." He glanced at Isabella, who nodded encouragingly. "As many of you know, we've been under attack from Genesis Corp, and this isn't just about a hostile takeover. This is about a conspiracy that goes far deeper than any of us realized." He paused, gauging the room's reaction. Fear mixed with curiosity was palpable. "We have evidence that Genesis has been manipulating financial records, attempting to frame us for fraud, and they've used Daniel as their pawn in this game." Gasps echoed around the table, and a few members exchanged worried glances. Ethan continued, "But we're not just going to sit back and let them destroy what we've built. Isabella and I have uncovered a substantial amount of information that we believe can not only protect Caldwell Technologies, but also bring Genesis Corp to justice." Isabella took a deep breath and leaned forward. "I've compiled documents, emails, and records that show how Genesis has operated. Their entire structure is built on deception, and we need to act now to protect our interest and expose their wrongdoing." A board member, Victor Harmon, interjected, "And how do we know this isn't just a ploy to distract us while they regroup?" Ethan's jaw tightened. "Because we have the evidence, and we're working with the FBI. They've already begun their investigation based on what we provided. We're not alone in this fight." The tension in the room shifted slightly as the board members began to see the potential for action rather than despair. Isabella presented the evidence, detailing the intricate web of deceit that Genesis had woven. The more she spoke, the more the board engaged, their initial fears giving way to determination. After an hour of intense discussion, Ethan felt a sense of camaraderie building in the room. They had a plan. They would launch an internal investigation, tighten security protocols, and prepare a public statement to reassure their clients and stakeholders. As the meeting concluded, Ethan felt a wave of relief wash over him. They had turned the tide. "Thank you all for your commitment," he said, standing as the board members filed out. "This is just the beginning." Isabella lingered behind, her expression thoughtful. "You handled that well," she said, crossing her arms. "They're starting to believe in us again." Ethan smiled, the weight on his shoulders feeling a little lighter. "I couldn't have done it without you. You're the one who brought the truth to light." "Just doing my job," she replied, but there was a spark of pride in her eyes. Let's keep this momentum going, Ethan said, his resolve strengthening. We'll meet with the FBI this afternoon and update them on our progress. I want them to see that we're serious about taking down Genesis. As they walked out of the conference room together, the atmosphere felt charged with possibility. They had faced darkness and emerged stronger, but the battle was far from over. Later that day, in the FBI's temporary headquarters, Ethan and Isabella presented their findings to Agent Lassiter and his team. We've uncovered a lot of information that can help your investigation, Isabella said, laying out the documents on the table before them. Lassiter looked over the files, his expression shifting from skepticism to interest. This is solid evidence. We can use this to build our case against Genesis. Ethan nodded. They've been operating under the radar for too long. It's time we expose them. We need to proceed carefully, Lassiter warned. Genesis has connections that run deep. If they suspect we're onto them, they may retaliate. Isabella met Ethan's gaze, the unspoken understanding between them stronger than ever. They were in this together, and they wouldn't back down. As they strategized with the FBI, the sense of urgency grew. The stakes were high, and every move they made would be critical. They had to outsmart Genesis before it was too late. Days turned into weeks as they worked tirelessly, gathering evidence, interviewing witnesses, and preparing for what they knew would be a fierce confrontation. With each passing day, Ethan and Isabella's bond deepened, forged in the fire of their shared struggle. One evening, as they reviewed the latest findings in Ethan's office, the atmosphere was charged with tension. We're close, Isabella said, her voice low. If we can just connect the dots between Genesis and their higher-ups, we can bring them down. Ethan leaned back in his chair, running a hand through his hair. It's frustrating knowing they're still out there, plotting their next move. We'll get them, Isabella said, her determination unwavering. We just need to stay one step ahead. As they continued their work, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that they were on the brink of something monumental. They were not just fighting for their company. They were fighting for justice. Then, one morning they received a tip-off about a meeting between Genesis executives that could potentially expose their plans. This is it, Ethan said, adrenaline surging through him. If we can get evidence of this meeting, we can finally put an end to their operations. Isabella nodded, her eyes alight with determination. We'll need to set up surveillance and gather as much information as we can. As they prepared to move, Ethan felt a sense of purpose wash over him. They were ready to face whatever Genesis threw at them. Together, they would see this through to the end. With their resolve strengthened by the challenges they had faced, Ethan and Isabella stepped into the fray, prepared to fight for their futures and bring down a corporation that had caused so much pain. They were no longer just allies. They were partners in every sense of the word, ready to take on the world together. Network error.